Okay. Wow. 5 weeks has gone quickly, everybody. The fifth part of the humanity series. I remember 5 weeks ago saying I never knew where this would end up. Just went free flowing. And I think most of you have been here, the majority of that. So thank you for being here. Some people might be tired, etc., by now, but I know that some people are watching online as well, because 4 o'clock is quite early for some people who work. So this is also for all of you out there in the internet, supporting you, for supporting me, for supporting the internet companies who are making so much money in the stock market at present. They are leading the pack. Is that a sign where humanity is going? Well, we might just discuss that if we have time at the end. I'll tell you what I have in mind for today. First of all, half the lesson, I'm sure, will just be going over the previous 4 lessons in just a very draft form without quoting all the proofs, just so that it's in your mind where the thinking has come from, and then we will finally resume with the final section about today, just general purpose of humans as well as our superhuman features that we have. Starting off with part 1, we spoke about what does it mean that we are godly, that we are created in the image of God, male and female, God created us. What exactly did that mean? We mentioned a few different classic examples, rabbinic opinions about what godliness means. We started off with Maimonides and the Sephorno, who said it's got to do something with our rational faculties, our ability to be intellectual. We can connect to God somehow through our brains. And we back that up by neuroscientists and scientists, among them quoting verses something along the lines of, the brain is the most complex object in the known universe. It's not just for no reason that the brain, still today, we don't know anything less than we know of the brain. The brain is so big, it is bigger to us than galaxies and solar systems and the universe. That's what it is to us, because there is that much unknown. Not to say that neuroscientists and others are not growing in leaps and bounds in their knowledge, but still we know very, very little about the brain. Everybody knows that. And that might be where Maimonides was coming from, knowing that, the brain is where most things happen, and therefore there must be something special about it. The second opinion we brought from the Or Sameach in his commentary Meshech Chochmah to the Torah, where he talks about it's not so much our brains, but it is our ability to be free. The concept of freedom of choice, which maybe one day we'll discuss. What exactly is our freedom? Are we always free? Are we hardly ever free, etc., etc.? But just the concept of the ability to be free, that makes us godly. Just like God has no limitations, when we use our freedom in a way that we also have no limitations, therefore that makes us godly. We mentioned that was a nice quote by Oscar Wilde. I may not agree with you, but I will defend you to the death, your right to make an ass of yourself. That's Oscar Wilde just making a joke out of the ability that everybody should have freedom of expression and of speech. And yes, according to some opinions out there, if you limit another human being's ability to speak, you are taking away from their Telem Elohim in this world. The godliness leaves this world when you restrict people's ability to speak. Third opinion we brought was the Netziv in the 1800s. He doesn't quote the other 2 opinions. He says it's more along the lines of nature, and that a human being intrinsically has a connection to nature, maybe even can understand nature, maybe we're all one with nature, and that is when God was saying we created in the image of God. It means that we're all a part of this natural phenomenon, just call it the organism of existence. And Rachel Carlson said, but man is a part of nature, and his war against nature is inevitably a war against himself. We know that human beings and nature sometimes go hand in hand, sometimes we hit heads with each other. And according to the Netziv, we have to be at one with nature. That is being a part of God, which is the image of God that we have understand. The image of God is the attachment to nature. That's my understanding of the Nitzid. Lastly, we brought Rabbi David Kimchi and Midrashim, which don't like to take the version of positivity that we're created in the image of God as if we have no limitations at some level, but they say the opposite. This is a limiting statement, saying that we're only created in the image or the form of God, meaning we're not God at all. At most, we're created in the image of some other celestial beings, angels or whatever else it is, but we are not at all godly, according to that opinion. And the Chizkuni, which I didn't quote the first time, but the Chizkuni, famous commentary on the Torah, says, the only reason the Torah needed to tell us this, that we're created in the image of other celestial beings, because I understand if the Torah is telling us that we're created in the image of God, that's a big statement. But if we're only created in the image of other celestial beings, why did the Torah even need to suggest that? So the Chizkuni adds, the only reason the Torah mentioned this is that if it didn't say that, human beings are so narcissistic that we would think that God is created in our image. So therefore the Torah had to say that we're created in the image of the angels, not that God is created in our image. Okay, that's a limiting factor, but the other three seem to suggest that we are created in the image of God. Even with limitations, you can still use them to your own advantage. That was Bruce Lee's quote, which is know your limitations, but capitalize on them. And I'll bring that back full circle at the end of this lecture. It might not be such a bad thing to know your limitations. Okay, that was part one. Part two. What is a human being at his core? Before the Torah is given, before we know anything, we're still in the caves, we're still wherever we are, whatever we're doing, whatever we're dressed with. What is our inner core? We mentioned from the literal reading of the Torah, it seems that there are two major facilities of a human being that are exaggerated the more that we live and the more experience we get, but they're there with us all the time. The first we mentioned is spiritual intuition. The idea that we're spiritual beings and that we have a spiritual purpose on this universe, we somehow want to attach ourselves to spirituality. How did the Torah say that? The Torah mentions that the son of Adam and Eve, firstborn was Cain, the secondborn was Abel, and they somehow know to offer offerings. Where do they know that you should bring offerings? There's no commandments, there's no temple. So the opinions of the rabbis wanted to say, no, it's intrinsic that a human being knows that there's a way to connect to God. I mentioned different opinions of how they knew this. One opinion was that an offering is a form of gratitude. So Cain and Abel knew that you should show your gratitude in some form or another. It's either helpful to you or it's what God wants, whatever the case is, but we understand the concept of gratitude, and gratitude links you to spirituality. The second link was submission. I think this was the Malbim who said that a human being intrinsically knows that they are an ant in a huge universe, and there is somewhat of a submission that needs to be made to the greater cause of things. I know that Avatar, the movie, and other books, and maybe the Aborigines, in Australia, they seem to suggest that you should submit to this higher, living organism out there, whether it's God or not, whatever they call it, but there's a greatness out there. I think in Africa, what his name, Johnny Clegg said, I'm searching for the spirit of the great heart, something like that. And yes, there might be this idea out there of overall spirituality, which Cain and Abel knew about. Lastly, we mentioned maybe the offering that Cain and Abel were giving was nothing to do with submission, nothing to do with gratitude, but it had to do with forgiveness, that they understood intrinsically that Adam and Eve had done something wrong by eating from the forbidden fruit. They were living in a world that was filled with, disobedience, and they were asking sorry. And the only way that they knew how to say sorry was to offer something, because they knew that their spiritual purpose was somehow to be forgiven. And that's a third opinion out there, all of them suggesting that a human being has a spirit, and intrinsically the spirit knows what to do. The other intuition that the human being knew was not only spirituality, but having a moral compass. And that a human being intrinsically has a moral compass before they told anything. Yes, according to this opinion, there are no excuses for African tribes and Sri Lankan tribes and Mongolian tribes, etc., to be cannibalistic and to murder each other and to do whatever else, because a human being knows that murder is wrong without being told. The Torah seems to say that because Cain seemingly knows that he's guilty without being told that he shouldn't murder his brother Abel. How did he know this? If you were a defense lawyer, you would say, I plead innocent because my client didn't know. No, he's not innocent. The Torah is telling us he's not innocent. God even curses him, seemingly suggesting that a human being has a moral compass. And we brought other examples in the Torah, which also suggested this, right at the beginning of the Torah. And God saw the light that it was good. Why are we giving a moral value of light before we even know what good and evil is? It must be that there's certain things that we just know that are good and certain things we know that they are bad. And those are just morals that we've been born with. The Ramban mentions it not from a verse in the Torah, but he introduces that concept that you can be a menuval b'reshut HaTorah. You can keep the whole of the Torah from the A to Z according to every single, checkbox, but you can still be a disgusting person. Why? Because morality is above the Torah. That there's a morality. Yes, you can keep kosher, but if you're stingy and you overeat and you serve yourself first before everybody else, and you take the last, you eat all the kichel at the kiddush and you don't leave any kichel for anyone else. Yes, you're eating on Shabbat, but you're being disgusting the way that you eat. And that's also another suggestion that there's a morality outside of the Torah that precedes the Torah. And that's the second intuition that a human being has. Okay, so that was part 2, spiritual yearning and moral intuition. Part 3, we started zoning in. Okay, that was human beings in the beginning of time. What about where we are today? What about the Jewish people? What about non-Jewish people? How does chosenness work? We introduced the Rambam's one family principle, that there's a reason that the Torah started with Adam and Eve. There's a reason that we all knew that we're a family, because that's what we are. We are above anything, above all nations, above differences, above nationalities and ethics. We are a family, and that's the way that we should see each other. Human beings stem from the same DNA. Unfortunately, according to the Seforno, he introduces the 3 principles and you are out principle, 3 strikes and you're out principle, that yes, Adam and Eve started, it was meant to be that all humans are chosen. And then they messed up and it went on to the next strike, which was Noah and his generation, and they messed up. And then the next strike was the Tower of Babylon. And at that point, God said, the strategy is not working. Human beings are not figuring out what they're meant to be doing on their own, en masse. Let me change strategy and let me select people or select groups to be role models for everybody else. Maybe the humans will be able to influence the others because it's not obviously coming from me. That was the introduction of Abraham. And we know that even Abraham, not all his children were chosen, only 2 out of the 8 that he had. Being Ishmael and Isaac. And that was the street strike you out principle, and that was the idea that yes, there is a thing called chosenness. Chosenness in general means you choose God, so God chooses you. How does that chosenness work? That was a huge debate between Maimonides and Maharal. Maimonides assumed that chosenness is dependent on your actions. You're chosen as long as you act well. But if you don't acting well, maybe you can use your chosenness. Whereas the Maharal was uncomfortable with that. He wanted to say that Abraham was chosen even before we learn that he's a big righteous person, to show you that, God picks certain people to be chosen, and that's that. You don't have a choice. That's the way that it is, and it never goes away. And we brought various verses to say pretty much the Jewish view, according to the text of the Tanakh, is yes, the Jewish people can be separated from God, but they can never be divorced from God. That was the verse in Isaiah. Okay, what about other faiths? Can other faiths be chosen as well? We mentioned the only verse in the whole of the Tanakh, Baruch Ami b'Mitzrayim, it's in Isaiah chapter 25, which talks about another nation being called my nation by God. Seemingly, the literal meaning is other nations can be chosen as long as they choose God. And that verse also mentioned Assyrians, etc. So yes, it's not exclusive elitist chosenness. It can ripple out as well. Maybe that's the purpose, is that the chosen one affects others and then everyone else becomes chosen as well. And lastly, we mentioned that analogy of the Sephono, that a non-Jew to a Jew is like a Jew to a Cohen. Meaning, a Cohen is a civil servant to the Jewish people. So too, the Jewish people are civil servants to the rest of humanity. And that's the way that it works. You know, chosenness isn't better. On the contrary, it means that you are responsible for. Okay, that was part 3. We're getting there. Part 4, last week. What does the Tanakh say about the future of humanity, of everybody? So once the Jewish people have influenced the others, or the other nations have figured out on their own what morality and purpose and things are on this planet, where does that leave them? We had a verse from the book of the prophet of Zephaniah in chapter 3, which mentioned all nations in the future will be speaking the language of God. And there are minority opinions that it means that everyone will be speaking Hebrew, but the majority understood it to mean that everyone will be talking the language of morality. We will all be acting, as a one world in one way, and therefore the other nations will also be included in that future. Deuteronomy, the Torah, chapter 4, also mentions that all people will be learning from the Jews about the laws in the Torah. They'll say what a wise and discerning nation they are, seeming that even the other nations will recognize the laws of the Torah being supreme and being something that we should live by. The book of Kings suggests that the temple was not only made for the Jewish people, it was made for all the people, those of King Solomon's words himself. That also suggests that the Jewish view of spirituality in the future is all people. It's open up to all people. Rabbi Yosef Kimchi, this was the crazy text that he alone, as far as I know, he's the only one who says this about this text in Isaiah chapter 66. But he even suggests that not only will non-Jews be in the future of morality, just like the Jewish people, but they will be the leaders, both of the Jews and of the non-Jews. Unbelievable. He says that the non-Jews will become, yes, either the Kohanim or the Levites themselves, like the text suggests, or they will be the attendants, just like there will be the attendants with the Kohanim and the Levites. No other commentary that I know of suggests that non-Jewish people in the future will be serving in the temple as attendants to the Kohens and the Levites. Unbelievable. Ezekiel chapter 47, also very interesting. The clear text of the verse seems to suggest that non-Jews in the future will be given possession, inheritance of the land of Israel itself. That's also quite a novel approach of the prophet Ezekiel. Again, commentaries say various things about it, but the clear, the literal meaning of the verse is that non-Jews will also have property in the land of Israel, which is quite a novel approach. Nowhere else does it say that. And lastly, the book of Joel, chapter 2, we said we don't know who wrote when Joel lived, but he mentions the possibility that all peoples in the future will be prophets. Prophecy will exist not just amongst Jews, not just amongst Kohanim, amongst all peoples will become prophets. We will all get like the download from God and how to see the world. And again, it's not really exclusive or elitist according to all these texts. Okay, finally, today's lesson. Now, I can't speak about the superhuman, but it's really about the purpose of humanity in general. Because until now, we've been talking about spirituality as well as moral intuition, as well as being created in the image of God. But nowhere have I mentioned what is the dream of God. When God created human beings, humanity, what was his overall vision of who we are, where we should get to, how we should do it? There's a lot of verses in the Torah that make suggestions to answer this question, but it's not clear cut. You can't read, you can look up in Google, to be human means ... And you will get various people suggesting various things. Many rabbis try to answer this question as well, but you can't read in the Torah anywhere where it says, I, God, created you in order ... Unfortunately, it doesn't make it so simple. And I'm going to suggest how various rabbis try to approach this problem, as well as maybe some other thoughts that I have, etc. Let's start off with the Ein Yaakov's introduction to his commentary. He brings various midrashim who ask the question, what is the most important verse in the Torah? Now, I'm assuming when they're asking this question, what's the most important verse in the Torah, there is some ramification for knowing what the most important verse in the Torah is. Because if you had to go ask, your average, religious Jew around the world, they will tell you every verse in the Torah is important. But there might be, the rabbis were obviously assuming that there are some verses that we should focus on more than others. And maybe this is what they were trying to ask, is that maybe there's a verse in the Torah that suggests to human beings what our purpose is more than other verses. So I'll quote you a few. This is Ben Nanas. It's quoted in another midrash by Rabbi Akiva. Also, Hillel said the same thing. This is the most famous one. Love your neighbor as yourself, or don't do to others as you wouldn't want to be done to you. Seemingly quite a simple verse. What is this telling us? Is this telling us that our emotions, our feelings, are the most important things? God created us in order to have feelings. When we get in touch with our feelings, that's when we are living our purpose. A superhuman being is someone who can really be empathetic and dig very deep inside their heart to have as deep feelings for themselves as others as possible. I'm saying for yourself and others because the verse says, love your neighbor as yourself, an implication that you love yourself already. Some people I meet out there, they hate themselves, but they love other people. They find it hard to look at their lives. Unfortunately, and I'm giving quite an extreme example, but someone who commits suicide, yes, he's unhappy, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't love other people. It might mean that he doesn't know how to cope with his own life, and maybe he or she hates him or herself, but they can still love other people. That's an interesting phenomenon, which I'll never really be able to understand, someone who can do that to themselves. But to love yourself to love others as much as you love yourself, when you do love yourself, that's quite a novel approach, because how can you ever have feelings for someone outside of you as much as you experience feelings for yourself, which are inside of you? Some philosophers would say that's impossible. Some spiritual healers will say that's impossible. The only thing that you can know is the feeling for yourself, because all feelings are felt inside you. That's what some people will say. But here the Torah is saying, no, you can have feelings for things outside of you as much as for things inside of you. That's quite a novel, deep thought. And I'm not sure if this is what Ben Nanas and Rabbi Akiva were saying, but a superhuman being, if you really meditate on this verse, if this is the most important verse in the Torah, it's not just about how much you act towards others, but it's how much you feel. How much can you have that love for another human being? You really can become a superhuman if you have feelings for others as much as you do for yourself. Okay, that's number one opinion. Second opinion, Ben Azai. That's our verse that we started off with, that human beings were created in the image of God. What is that trying to say? What does it mean that that's the most important verse? Well, I've already said what the Maimonides and the Meshech Chochmah and others said, but it's the idea that, yes, your spirituality is the most important, that the image of God inside you, your connection to spirituality is your purpose. That is what you can achieve on this planet. That's why you were created, and that's another opinion. Again, just, how far can you take that? If you want to be a superhuman being, well, theoretically, there is no limit, because spirituality is connecting to your infinite source. So it's infinite, your connection. And therefore you can understand that God would give us an infinite purpose. Okay, third, Ben Zoma says, the Shema, the verse of the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Okay, it's a belief. It's a belief that there's one God, that there's no others, that everything's connected. What does it mean to be a superhuman being with regards to this? Well, the rabbis generally assume that you're not meant to believe in God. You're meant to know that God exists. You're meant to take it from the red side, where everything is confusion. And yes, I believe in some things, but I don't really know, to the green side, which is I actually know that God exists. Okay, so that's an interesting idea as well that can be taken very, very far. I'll also talk about that in the end. Lastly, we have Shimon ben Pazi, who says, and this is the most cryptic, and it's weird, this whole midrash. He says it's the verse in Numbers chapter 28, verse 4, which talks about the daily offering in the temple. And what's interesting is that Shimon ben Pazi lived after the temple. Unbelievable. So he's quoting the most important verse in the Torah is to bring the sacrifices that don't exist anymore in the morning and the evening. And that midrash ends up by saying, Rabbi Ploni, which whoever knows Hebrew, Ploni means Mr. Anonymous. So I didn't want to quote which rabbi it is, but it says, Rabbi Anonymous says that the verse about the daily offerings is the correct answer. Unbelievable. Over the belief in God, over the potential for spirituality of the created image of God, over the first one, love your neighbor as yourself, this rabbi assumed the daily offering is the most important verse in the Torah. Interesting, I would say probably not, but the idea being that, constant commitment, that daily offering, the idea that every day, both in the morning and in the evening, a human being has to commit to something. It's got to be constant, perpetual, maybe even an offering. The specific offering that verse is talking about is the Todah offering, the gratitude offering, right? Just like Modeh Ani, Todah in modern Hebrew. Thank you. Unbelievable idea. So maybe the idea is either gratitude or constant commitment. Hashem is saying to you, human beings, you have to be constantly committed. But to what? What are we meant to be constantly committed? So this is where we have to come on to other verses. Maybe it's just the Torah itself, the idea of gratitude. And here are a couple of other verses that I think say something about this in the Torah. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 19. See, before you I set a blessing and a curse, and you should choose life. You should be committed in the morning and the evening to the idea that you have to say yes to life. I just mentioned suicide a few seconds ago. I once heard that there's no other animals on earth that know how to commit suicide, that choose to commit suicide. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but human beings definitely are one of the only species that I know of that can say no to life because everything else just wants to survive. And that's an idea that human beings have been given the freedom to choose life or not choose life, and we have to commit to it. Not such an easy process, I might add. Every human being goes through depression and anxiety and all different things. And it's not easy to say yes, but that's what we're meant to be committed to. As Louise Hay says, as I say yes to life, life says yes to me. Yes, you have to put that commitment out there, but once you commit, you'll be surprised the blessings that come back to you. Kohelet, King Solomon, at the end of the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 12, verse 13. The sum of the matter, when all is done, revere God and observe his commandments. Now again, I'm sure there's lots of commentaries how to understand this. Is this telling us that life is about obedience? Is this telling us that life is about actions? Is this telling us to live a simple life? Don't philosophize. Just be aware that God's out there and do his commandments, and that's that. You don't have to figure out where this universe comes from. You don't have to figure out what human strengths you have. Just be simple and do what's told to you. Maybe that's what King Solomon was saying. I'm not sure. But that is another verse in the Torah that seemingly suggesting to us what the purpose of life is. If whoever's read that book of Ecclesiastes, he goes through, me as the King of Solomon, I search for happiness. I went and I married 1,000 women. I didn't find happiness there. I'm the richest person that I know. I didn't find happiness in wealth. I did this. I tried to find wisdom. I got bored of wisdom, blah, 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 blah. He ends up by coming and saying, awareness of God and doing the commandments is what it's all about. So I read that as that there's some type of simplicity that King Solomon is saying, that the purpose of life is to just be simple, not take it too seriously, not be too deep in your thoughts about everything. That's the way that I read it. And there's a quote, I don't know who said it, but I like it. It's similar to the way that I read this verse, which is, the secret of staying young is to be simple and happy like a child. Don't think too hard. Your parent tells you what to do. Just do it and enjoy the process. Okay, another verse. God put us in the Garden of Eden to work it and protect it. Seemingly the first commandment, or one of the first commandments in the Torah, is life about work. Well, there are a lot of people live life like it is. That life is about work. That's what we're meant to be doing all day long. Matter of fact, when people get unemployed, a lot of people go into depression. They love work all of a sudden because it's not easy to just be at home and twiddle your thumbs. Is this saying that we should be busy? Is God telling us right in the beginning of the Torah, the purpose of life is to be busy? That's why I'm telling you need to work. Or is it to be responsible? Lo shomra, you have to take care of the garden. Or is it both? Be busy and be responsible? Not sure. I love this quote. Is there time for this quote? I think there is. This is from one of the early Zionist philosophers. He believed that work redeems you. His name is A.D. Gordon. There's a few streets in Israel named after him. Gordon Street in Tel Aviv and others. This is his quote. Beautiful quote. It's quite long, so just bear with me. You work here on the farm simply without philosophizing. Sometimes the work is hard and crowded with pettiness, but at times you feel a surge of cosmic exaltation, like the clear light of the heavens. And you too seem to take root in the soil which you are digging, to be nourished by the rays of the sun, to share life with the tiniest blade of grass, with each flower living in nature's depths. You seem then to rise and grow into the vast expanse of the universe. So A.D. Gordon, was gung-ho about living on a kibbutz and working the land, and through the work, you'll come to understand God, because your mind goes to many, many places if you don't work, but just concentrate on the work. Every blade of grass will be teaching you something. And that is an interesting idea from Lo Shamra. Maybe there is some truth in that man's purpose is to work. We're not meant to just be, creatures that eat all day. We're meant to be doing something with our time. Okay, last two that I thought of. Again, there's lots of verses, lots of proofs that you can think of what the purpose of humanity is and how we become superhuman beings. Listen to this one. This is a little bit, thank you. This is a little bit negative, except it could be positive. This is from the book, The Way of God by the Ramchal. Part 1. You don't have to get past first page. Okay. The purpose of creation was to give from his goodness, meaning from God's goodness, blessed be he, to another besides him. Unbelievable. Derech Hashem says, the purpose of creation is from God's perspective, that God needed to share the definition of goodness. God is good. Goodness needs to share, and somehow we were created as a pawn, so to speak, for God to share his infiniteness with us. And again, this is the Bruce Lee idea that limitations are not so bad. Maybe the goal of creation is to realize that you don't even exist, that you're just a pawn in this whole thing, which is godly, because you will never understand infinity. So your goal in your finite mind is to try understand infinity, to attach yourself to the idea that you don't even exist. I remember once I was in San Diego, and this one lady, I was meeting at this very like Lani, I think that word Lani is a real word. It means like a very, 5-star hotel kind of, idea in La Jolla. Forget the name of the hotel, but it's the major 5-star hotel in La Jolla. And I was, greeted by a couple of, millionaires and multi-millionaires and maybe billionaires. I don't even know who I was meeting. I was just meeting a friend who was meeting his clients. And I sat down to the table with these very rich people. And the one lady, the first thing she said to me, she's like, "Oh, you're a rabbi, right?" I said, "Yes." So she goes, "Oh, so does that mean that you believe in God?" That was the way that she said it. That was the way that she said it. I couldn't believe my ears. The first thing that you're saying before, like, "What's your name? How are you? Where are your rabbi?" "Oh, so you must believe in God, right?" And I said to her, "Actually, I believe that God exists more than I believe you exist." And she almost fell off a chair. She didn't even know how to handle what I just said to her. And again, there is some truth in what I was saying, but also I was a little bit upset with the way that she said to me. So I was abrupt with her as well. Okay, not teaching vengeance, but that's just what I did. Okay, and yes, maybe that's where this idea of Derech Hashem is coming from, that the goal is to realize that you don't even exist because the only reality is in God's sphere. Okay, so that's a kind of a very deep thought, but it's whoever wants to learn something about that, think about that. And lastly, there's two more. Genesis chapter 3, verse 2. It says, God kicks us out of the Garden of Eden and says, "Lest you eat from the fruit of life as well, and you live forever and become a God like us." And the idea being, yes, maybe God was saying to us that human beings have unlimited potential. We theoretically can live forever. We theoretically can know the difference between good and evil in the clearest form possible. And the combination of that is superhuman. And God was saying, superhumans, we're not ready for superhumans yet, but technically speaking, it could be possible. And that's the opposite effect of what the Derech Hashem was saying. Not that you are finite and you can never know infinity, but actually you can reach that point of coming back to God, of infinity, just like the literal meaning of the Torah says, lest you become like gods. Okay, that's also a deep, deep thought. And lastly, because I've only got one more minute to end off humanity, thank you for all being here. You are all humans, okay? I know that sounds funny, but I'm saying that as a compliment. You are humans in the greatest sense of the word. You have a Tselem Elohim just like me, just like the rest of us. If only we could all see that. And I'll end off with, what does it mean that the Torah doesn't tell us clearly what the purpose is? Maybe the idea is the purpose is to enjoy the journey in figuring out what the purpose is. We can all use the image of God within us to try to figure that out. And I'm sure if we try that, we will start connecting to God and realizing our superhuman potential through whichever faculties we choose. Thank you for being here, everyone. Love you all, and look forward to a new series. Not sure what it is yet. I've got a couple of ideas, but you'll hear about that in the coming weeks. Thank you all.